Hey friends, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to talk about the differences between spiritual technology and other things. So other things include sorcery, witchcraft, wizardry, astrology, palm reading, card reading, Satanism, clairvoyance, divination, charms, spells, and magic. Um, Astrology is like where they try to read your horoscope, what sign are you, and stuff like that. So the difference between these two categories is that spiritual technology is sacred and the others are profane. Now that might sound like name calling at first, that, oh, okay, ours is sacred, theirs is profane. But when we look at it deeper, we understand the difference. So sacred things are always good. These things, some are specifically evil or harm oriented, like Satanism. Um, Others may have good intentions, uh, but are nonetheless of a profane character. So, you heard people say that, there can be good witches or, a good wizard or something like that. They don't necessarily mean bad, but it's still of a profane character. Then there's also loose variants that are neither sacred nor profane. For example, magic tricks for entertainment or Halloween costumes. But even these can become profane if they're meant or taken too seriously, or one becomes obsessive, like overindulging in Harry Potter films or something like that. They start living in a make-believe world. So what distinguishes sacred things is that God is the source and the goal. So that's why they're always good. Uh, with sacred things, you're going to be guided by the Spirit of God. So God will guide you. With profane things, you end up being tricked by humans. So, or tricked by your own imagination and things like that. So, it's like where they do magic. They say it's special powers, but it's actually just a sleight of hand. Sacred things are open to the spirit. Profane things are closed off for the most part. They might have a spiritual aspect, and the reason for that is that all human beings are spiritual. They're spirits. So there's no way to get away from that fact. So even somebody who's doing something bad still has a spiritual component to that. But basically, the question is whether you're open to a spiritual increase or closed off from it. Sacred things open you up to spiritual increase. Um, Sacred things help people to find themselves, to be grounded, to find truth and happiness. Profane things, basically, they help you get lost. So you'll be lost in trickery and a life that is close to the openness of the spirit. With sacred things, you become wiser. With profane things, you become more and more conceited. In other words, you're basically taking confidence in a false ground or false foundation, something that doesn't really connect you to the true purpose of life. Sacred things increase your clarity. You become clearer on things. Profane things make you more confused. So that's a way of looking at it. Say sacred things are always good. Unlike profane things. Um, the difference between profane and evil is that profane things aren't necessarily intended to do harm, you know, and they're not necessarily going to cause you great harm, but they're not headed in the right direction. Sacred is headed in the right direction. So with spiritual technology, you accept God as the source and the goal, and you accept that God will guide you spiritually. So how do we tell the difference between what is sacred and profane without a clear definition? So, for example, there's been a lot of sociologists and psychologists who have looked at sacred versus profane in a very trivial, superficial way. These symbols are symbols of the church, and so they're sacred, and other symbols are not, so they're profane and things like that. But that's not really the more intelligent way of looking at it. The intelligent way of looking at it is to know that there is a difference, even though we don't have a clear definition, and that we rely on God for guidance as to which path we're going to take. Are we going to take the sacred path or the profane path? Well, we don't really know exactly which is which or what the definition is in every instance, at every step of our lives, but we rely on God. So true spiritual technology is sacred because it always relies on God for guidance. The others are profane because they attempt to replace God's guidance with something else. So all of these ones try to replace with something else, like astrology. They look at the stars, card reading, they look at cards, so that's where they get their guidance from. So spiritual technology is always headed in God. In other words, God is the main subject of spiritual technology, whereas the others are not headed in God. So that's how we know the difference between what is sacred and profane. It's ultimately a difference of whether we're guided by God's Spirit and we accept that guidance or we don't.